Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to be joined by my friend and business partner, Mr. Michael Vincent, Mr. Podcaster Extraordinaire. We work together on emissions reduction, fuel reduction, plastics waste reduction. Michael is president of OPT USA. You're going to have to check that out for sure. And today we're going to be talking about the fuel additives market. Specifically, the fuel additives market is expected to be worth $7.1 billion US by 2026. So it's growing, expanding, lots of things, lots of tailwinds going on there. So how are you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing great. I was going to say, you forgot chief marketing officer, janitor, mechanic, machine operator, sales rep, everything. I do it all, my friend. I was just sweeping up out there and running some samples and adjusting the machine, and I ran in and threw some water through my hair and washed my face off and threw on a nice shirt, so I could be with you, to be marketing. I mean, now it's podcast extraordinaire, right? So you know how it is, dude. You're an entrepreneur. You know how it is. You're everything.
I do. Right? I know exactly what you mean. I was on a frac spread a week and a half ago in fire retardant gear, hard hat, goggles, steel toes, walking around in some mud, right? I'm out there, I'm here. You just do what you got to do, right?
You absolutely do, man. You absolutely do. It's a huge market, 7.1 billion. And you know what's interesting to me? You're talking about the fuel additives market, and there's a bunch of reasons why there's tailwinds behind it, right? But it's funny. It's not funny, but it's interesting because I literally just put a thing out yesterday about fastcompany.com, right? Fastcompany.com, and then I think it was S&P's World Market Intelligence. VC-backed startups failure bankruptcy rate is the highest rate since 2010 right now for this year, right? And they cite, high interest rates and nervous money and all this other kind of stuff for it, right? But you look at the categories that are in there, and they're healthcare, they're data transparency technology type of stuff, right? They're these nascent type of companies that with data and intelligence and efficiencies and this type of stuff that, in my opinion, don't directly impact in a noticeable and meaningful way the average person and the average business or entity, right? So in other words, Maersk can grab all the data all day long, but running green fuel has an immediate impact, and you can see it, and everybody there is impacted by it. From the investors to the seamen on the ships are impacted immediately. Give them new data, and maybe you can make a justice or a case for the ROI in a couple of years or whatever it is, or maybe not, right?
Right.
And that's what I see. I mean, I know data and using the data and the predictive abilities and all that other kind of stuff is incredibly important. I was in that game for a long time, right? And it's really, really important stuff. What I'm saying is it's hard to get a tangible result out of that and say, this is 100% because of that.
Right.
Putting the fuel additive in your truck is either going to kill your truck or make it amazing and make you a ton of money, right? It's an immediate impact. That's my
Absolutely.
point.
Yeah, we've been doing studies, as you know, pilot projects all over the place, and the average fuel reduction is 20%. That is an immediate impact. And people are reducing their fuel spend by 10 to 20% with the CyberFuels additive. And it's just fun and exciting. And
fuel just jumped like 12 cents last week or whatever it was. Just went.
Yep, it did. Yeah, it's surged for 3 weeks in a row now, based on various things happening in the market. So yeah, there's a ton of this article from marketsandmarkets.com.
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
They talk about quite a few factors for the growth of fuel additives. And first one that I came across was stringent government regulations driving fuel additives growth.
See, that's it. That's not a small point. I can see why it's the first one and the first one you pick because it's huge. If you're looking and you're looking at investing in something, right? And I'm looking at it from an investor. I mean, you should buy this stuff because it's average 20% better fuel mileage. Average. And here's the deal. We talk about surging fuel prices and they surged over the last 3 weeks. Doesn't matter why. They do. And most of it isn't because anything happened. It's because people think something might happen, right? The whole Russia thing, there was no shortage of oil. It was scared investors. Okay. The whole Colonial Pipeline, the only reason there was fuel shortage and it went like crazy is because investors were too scared to truck this stuff up or put it on a barge and move it up there because they thought the fuel price, the futures would change in price before it got there and they'd lose their ass on moving the oil. Only reason you didn't have the gasoline
Right.
because of the Continental.
Right.
The only reason was money. So here's the thing. You can still save 20% even if fuel goes in half the cost next week. Even if it
Right.
drops by $1.50 in the next 5 days, you still can save 20%, which is
That's right.
amazing. But here's the point. If government is driving this and legislation is driving this and society is behind it, all those factors behind it make the business we're in together with CyberFuels as rock solid as it could possibly be. One, it is a proven by data and testing technology, and it works, right? Two, it's practically mandated. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And I got a question for you.
Yeah.
All right. Of the markets in the world, what do you think the number one market for fuel additives is in the world right now?
Okay. So I would guess, since you didn't, I mean, I would normally, this is one of those questions where you either answer the obvious one or the question is set up so that you pick the obvious one and you're wrong, right?
I'm
I
not
would
trying to
say,
set you up.
okay, the largest market. So does Europe count as one unit?
Europe does count as one market. Yes.
Okay, so I'll go with Europe just because I think that they're ahead of us in mandating and having that type of stuff.
It turns out right where we live, North America is the
No kidding.
largest market right now.
Well,
Now,
is it the largest market in use, in terms of use, or in terms of addressable market that you could obtain?
that's a good question. All it said was it is the largest market,
I got it.
followed by APAC and Europe. That's all it said. I didn't get
Okay.
more statistics further than that, but it probably is total market, right?
Yeah, total market, total addressable market, right? Is probably what
Yeah,
they're looking at, right?
that's
Okay,
probably
so that
exactly what they're looking
that
at.
totally makes sense. Totally makes sense.
Yep.
And you know what? It's only growing over here too, and the distance people are traveling is growing. You know, we get more products now from Canada and Mexico than we do China.
Oh, I did not know that. That's very
Yeah, so I
interesting.
read that yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Made in Canada, made in Mexico.
Yeah. Fabrique au
Interesting.
Canada.
Well, I remember the days of NAFTA getting launched and all the turmoil that was going on with that, but
Yeah.
I think it's just carried on probably.
Well,
Right.
it accelerated a little bit with the near shoring or other than China shoring, right?
Yeah, I bet you that's exactly right. With all the supply chain issues that happened in 2020 and 2021, I would imagine there's a lot of companies that wanted to go near shore
Yeah.
rather than all the way over there for various different components, I would imagine. So that makes sense. That does make sense. Another
the
big
EPA
factor.
Go ahead, please. I was going to ask about the EPA. Is that one of these factors?
It is the EPA has regularly modified and enforced several norms for reducing vehicular emissions and improving the quality and efficiency of fuels used. That's really right in our wheelhouse. So that's
No,
another big factor.
It really is. It really is. And is it? So when you talk about but there's no government incentives yet, right? I mean, it's not like if you buy an electric car, then you get X amount of tax relief. They haven't gone that far. Like if you're using additives that reduce emissions, are there benefits other than the fact that, you know, you're not polluting the hell out of the planet for no reason, and you're saving 20% on your fuel spend, which are two really good reasons to do it anyways. But does the government slather any icing on top of that cake or no?
You know, the EPA has done various different rules and regulations over the years to keep pushing things forward. And the problem that I've always had when I talk to fleet owners, they said, all these things have always cost me more money. The truck costs more money. The DEF fluid costs me money. The particulate filters cost me money. In the case of maritime, we had to add millions of dollars of scrubbers put on the vessels.
Yeah, because what they did is they took the pollution out of the air, put it in the ocean. So that was brilliant.
That was, yeah. I don't
money well
understand.
Spent. And that's why people think that all these ESG and all this kind of stuff are just scams, because they make money.
Right. Right.
Yep. And you know what? A lot of them probably are.
Well, there's definitely new markets available. And as you know, Michael, in this area of sustainability, it is a green field of opportunity. And the cool thing that I love about what you're doing with the plastics waste reduction and recycling, and what we're doing together with fuel and emissions, is it's cost beneficial, making more money while you're going greener and more sustainable. I just love that about it.
100%. It's cheaper to reuse a part than it is to make a new one in many, 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 many cases.
Right.
And once you get the right infrastructure for the supply chain, as procurement people, it's cheaper to bring in the recycled than it is to bring in the virgin. I'm running.
Right. Yeah, especially when you're doing it like you are. You get it at the source, the scraps and the overruns and everything. You recycle it and get it back into production. You don't ship it to China or Indonesia or whatever, right? It's there. And right. So, yeah, there's got to be some major cost savings there.
Oh, I mean, right. I'm running, well, I mean, the potential is, I'm running 2,000 pounds of mud flaps right now. The scraps, and these are post-industrial. So these are just the scraps from making the mud flaps that would normally go into, somebody might, waste to energy burning the stuff. Ooh, that's not green, people.
Right.
It's bad.
Burning plastics and rubber is not environmentally friendly.
No, you can scrub the hell out of that all day long. It's still not a good, no bueno. Or throwing it in a landfill. And so what we've got is the company that makes these is now, I take all their scrap, grind it back down into flakes, send it back up, and then they make more.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So one other big thing about the fuel industry in general, over the years, the EPA and other organizations have reduced the amount of sulfur content in the fuel itself.
They're correct. Yeah.
Now, that sounds great because sulfur oxide is bad for people. It's not good for you, right?
It smells bad too.
But the thing that sulfur did with the fuel is it added lubricity. Having higher sulfur increases the lubricity for all those parts running around and pistons and shafts and everything. So what we're doing with CyberFuels is, as that sulfur is continuously decreased, we're adding lubricity, and we're cleaner burning fuel as well. So those are two of the big primary benefits. Adding lubricity, making the engine run cleaner as well, are big time benefits.
Yeah, I was going to ask, first of all, thank you for saying lubricity, because if I would have said that, I would have come out first with lubrosity.
Right.
And that clearly is not correct.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you about that, because when you go to like some of these other diesel alternatives, like these green diesel, like biodiesel and green diesel, whatever it happens, you lose that energy density in some of those fuels, right? So you lose that gas mileage because of those fuels. Even though they're greener, right? You're losing some, and CyberFuels will actually bring that back in those fuels. Right. It'll up that energy density game, which is really what it does, right? I mean, and when you get down to the nuts and bolts and chemistry of it, it burns the diesel molecule more efficiently and therefore you're getting more energy out of it and less waste, because that's what happens when you burn something inefficiently. You don't get as much energy and you get waste. That's why pyrolysis is something that they think is going to be helpful for plastics if you burn it at a really, really, really hot temperature, right? Or efficient temperature. So
Yeah.
I was going to ask, does this have an impact on, because we have more and more stressed out engines because of what we're putting these things in, and clearly it does. I had no idea that sulfur was the lubricity inside diesel, but that's very, very interesting. And so that's why you talk about the fact that it's lowering the emissions, it's burning cleaner in the engine, it's adding back to lubricity. And so you would imagine, do we have statements or data on maintenance costs yet with CyberFuels, or we anecdotally or anything like that?
Anecdotally, yes. But with maintenance costs, it's a multi-year kind of a measurement, right?
Right.
So we know that the engine is cleaner, it's lubricated, the carbon's removed, it's running more efficiently. There's 6 benefits altogether, right?
Right.
Ignition improvement, which is basically taking that fuel and burning it more completely, is one of the big ones, right?
Yeah.
But then you're also removing the carbon, which causes friction and heat. Remove that. Lubricate the cylinder. And you're basically reducing the emissions right off the combustion chamber, which of course, so I did a study in Denver where we wanted to measure diesel exhaust fluid. So diesel exhaust fluid is used to burn off the emissions after the combustion chamber, right?
Right.
Well, there's particulate filters and there's fluid that burns very, very hot, right, to get rid of particulate matter before it hits the tailpipe. Well, we reduce the diesel exhaust fluid by 21.95%. So that is a tangible measurement that you're going to have that much less DEF and that much less particulate matter going through your after engine, cleanup system, basically. So, we've measured that. But, as far as how much less particulate filters and how much less injectors and less cylinders and engine blocks and so forth, it takes years to know exactly.
Yeah, you'd have to, but all the indicators would say, okay, it is all these different stress points in the engine. This has a positive impact. Therefore, it is certainly not causing more stress. It is certainly reducing stress at these points throughout the whole engine, the powertrain.
Absolutely. Making it run more efficiently, cleaner, more lubricated. It's just a benefit. And you want to catch it at combustion. You don't want to be doing after treatment systems. Let's add another particulate filter and more DEF and more this, and catch it where at the source is what we're doing, and burn it. And
that's what we're doing. We're catching plastic at the source. Go to the source, fix it there, not after the fact, right?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Get it at the source where it makes
sense.
So
that's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is.
Yep.
That is very cool. People just need to think a little bit differently, and they need to think out of the box, and they need to think about the fact that, listen, it really is. It's a no risk and really almost no effort test to just say, hey, look, here's my trucks. Test some of my trucks. Okay, right? I mean, you're not going to bring a CyberFuels truck and say, hey, we're running it in here. Look at how great it is. Therefore, buy some. No, you take your truck and run it.
We're doing pilots all over the place with measured results, right? Measured baseline before we did anything, and then measure what happened after we treated the fuel and just see what happens. And time and time again, we got the highest one was 30.39% mile per gallon increase. Well, it was the highest, but we're averaging 20%. So it's a game changer.
Wow. So was there any particulars about that 30.9 or whatever it was truck that you can say that's probably why this happened?
Yep. It was older engines that ran local regional heavy haul lumber. So they idled a lot at the construction site. So the biggest impact is how many hours ran on that engine. I don't care if you're going 70 miles an hour, how many hours ran and you're just churning And especially if you're parked and idling for hours on end, that
So,
is
so
hard.
does so
Hard
they
on the
did
engine.
a lot of studies on emissions and so on and so forth and optimization and that type of thing to reduce emissions, route optimization and all that kind of stuff, right? You've heard all of these things, right?
Yep.
And so one of the studies was from the transportation school or center, whatever it is, from MIT that did one in Mexico City. And one of the big things that they found was in there something that we were doing at Roadway Express way before they were bought and then put out of business by Yellow
Right.
back in the day, was routing efficiently based on topography and based on traffic flow, right? And so the slope, even if they ran 20% further miles, if they had less elevation change due to that driving and less slope in that elevation change, they reduced their carbon footprint dramatically because of the stress on the engine and the burning of the fuels to get up those. Is that part of it with this as well? Like when you're talking about logging regionally, those trucks are pulling some heavy loads.
Heavy loads, right?
I dare
And
say a few of them
tends to be
would not be legal.
also tends to be hilly areas as well. Tends to be.
You need a lot of torque on that engine. Low end torque is essential to be running that stuff, and that's when those plumes of black just
Yeah, and you think about it, if you're doing a lot of local regional, there's a lot more stop and go. So you stopped an 89,000 pound load, and now you have to get it back up to 55 miles an hour again, right? So there's some serious stress on those engines.
When you left, it was 89,000 pounds, but then it rained, so now you're about 93.
Right, exactly, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's it really, the biggest factor we've seen over all the studies is number of hours that ran on that engine. That is the biggest determining factor. Those were older engines, ran a lot of hours, and it had the biggest impact of any of the studies we've done so far.
So let me ask you this, Andy. This is something that I've wanted to ask you before, and I always think about it afterwards, after our discussions. Is this something that that would count toward you have to have X number of clean, you have to have these clean burning engines by this time, the mandate that all these engines must be of a certain spec and a certain year by here, the Port of Los Angeles will only accept these engines now. Does this help get grandfathered through some of those regulations? Yeah, listen, I got one that's 5 years younger, but using CyberFuels, it's actually burning cleaner than it's when you're mandated, right? Does it have the potential to do that? I mean, I doubt there's anything now that says, hey, if you're using CyberFuels, you can bypass these things, but I would think there'd be a potential there to prove, look, this is even more efficient than the one you're mandating. Have you heard or thought about that type of stuff?
Well, it's honestly been a bit of a frustration on that front because we impact emissions substantially, plus less greenhouse gas, less fuel, right? But there's not a program for anything that's not mechanical. Okay.
See, that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense to me either, but all we're doing is we're just helping companies. Here's how we're combating it. We'll help companies save money and they're going greener at the same time. We are ahead of the mandates, right? If you run a tier 3 engine plus CyberFuels, you're ahead of the mandate. So
way ahead of them.
Yeah. So we just help companies save money and that all of the other stuff. Hopefully at some point somebody will wake up and it'll hit and but there's I've been down this path multiple times and there's all kinds of things for idling reduction or combustion improvement mechanically, but not fuel additives wise yet. But I think it'll happen at some point.
Well, it only makes sense. It would only make sense that it did because I mean, when you look at the laws for changing engines and upgrading and so on and so forth, and the pace that they have to be done, It's you can make a case that it really is not going to squeeze that many people or even the little guys that much because I mean, yes, they're going to cost more, but the time frame to do it is actually pretty realistic when you look at those, and because nobody's going to be driving a 10-year-old truck in five, they're not. But this would certainly ease some of that pain if you're able to use this to get into it, right?
Right. Absolutely. You can hook up an analyzer to the tailpipe or the engine or both and show what the impacts are. And so, yeah, I think it'll gain more and more traction.
Yeah.
It's just that the focus of the OEMs and the EPA have been on mechanical changes.
Yeah.
That's
I
all.
get it. I get it.
That's where the focus has been. I do think it'll probably change over the years. But yeah, it's just that's where things are right now. So
I get it, brother. I get it. Well, we're going to keep our focus on plastics and fuel.
that's right. Absolutely. Helping companies save money while going greener and more sustainable. Hey, we're in a good spot, I feel like.
Amen. That's what we need to be doing. That's what we need to be doing. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, it's always fun. I'm sure we'll have more conversations on this whole green fuel market and what's going to happen and what's going on. And I just see a lot of tailwinds. So we'll have other discussions on this front, I'm sure. That'll do it for this show today. Thanks again, Michael, for joining me.
Amen. Peace and love.
All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. And we will see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.